Hello everybody, it's your Peacekeeper, and welcome back to the Gaming Lounge. And in this video, we are going to talk about the Tier 9 Premium USS Georgia. That's right, this is my review and let's play, or how to play video, if you will, on the Georgia. The Georgia is a proto-Iowa class design. It was an evolution of the South Dakota class ships, as the Iowa class was, and the Georgia's specific design plan called for 6 18-inch 48 caliber Mark I guns. These are guns that were being prototyped after World War I, before all of the naval treaties basically poo-pooed on anything larger than 14-inch caliber gun, or 14-inch diameter guns, rather. The 18-inch 48 cal Mark I never actually ended up on a ship, and was actually rebarreled into the 16-inch 56 caliber Mark IV to test a high-velocity 16-inch gun. Of course, we know, based upon, the numbering scheme for the 16-inch gun, we know that it did not get accepted, and it would be the Mark V and then later the Mark VII that would end up on the North Carolina, South Dakota, and Iowa classes, respectively. And the whole purpose of that gun was to test high-velocity 16-inch guns. It was scrapped due to excessive liner wear. Basically, it would wear out the rifling on the gun liner. And in 1938, after Japan's refusal to adhere to the Second London Naval Treaty, the gun itself was actually repurposed again to potentially arm the Montana-class battleships with an 18-inch shell. The original prototype liner was relined into the 18-inch 47 caliber Mark A, firing a 3,850-pound super heavy armor-piercing capped ballistic shell. The gun itself is on display at the Dahlgren Naval Surface Warfare Center in Virginia, so you can actually see the barrel assembly itself. That would be really cool to see. Enough of talking about the real-world stuff. What's it like in-game? Georgia's a bit of an oddball ship. Effectively, her playstyle is like a cross between Massachusetts, with its secondaries, and Iowa. She has the armor profile and speed of Iowa, but with the Massachusetts secondaries. The secondaries have an 11.3 kilometer max range and are frighteningly accurate with the manual fire control for secondaries skill on your captain. The biggest change, though, from the Iowa or the Massachusetts is going to be those 18-inch 48 caliber Mark I guns, of which Georgia has 6 in total. People who are familiar with the Gneisenau will recognize the gun layout. You have 2 up front in a super firing pair and 1 out back. Turret-wise, each turret has 2 barrels. The turret angles are extremely generous. The ship has very comparable turret angles to the Iowa, and so as a result, it's actually very easy to get all of the guns on target while remaining effectively angled. You do have to open up just enough that if they catch you at the wrong time, they can get some damage through, but you can always sneak it back in. The ship's is very maneuverable for a battleship. I mean, very, very maneuverable. Absolutely impressed with the maneuverability of the ship. The other big change, is obviously those 18-inch 48 cal Mark I guns. Those guns are... oh man, they're not like Gneisenau at all. Gneisenau is inaccurate. It's really frustrating to use those 15-inch guns on Gneisenau, but these 18-inch guns are like freaking lasers, in my opinion. Once you get these things on target, you generally get 2 outcomes. You either overpen, or you get a penetrating hit that does a massive amount of damage, whether that's a Citadel or just a normal penetrating hit. We're either talking like 1,800 damage or 20,000 damage. That's been it's all or nothing. The other interesting aspect to Georgia is that she has access to the speed boost consumable and a unique heal. I'm not sure what the methodology or thought process is behind giving a battleship the speed boost consumable, a battleship in the US tech tree anyway, the speed boost consumable, but again, Georgia is an awful lot like Iowa in that it has a really fast base top speed, 34.6 knots with the speed flag on. The minute you boost up into the speed boost range, what ends up happening is you end up going just shy of 40 knots. And that has some interesting playstyle problems and advantages that you have to pay attention to. You would think all of these things together would combine to make a pretty potent ship, and you'd actually be kind of surprised at how mediocre Georgia is outside of that secondary build. When I first got Georgia, I set her up like I set up all the rest of my US battleships, and I was excessively disappointed with the performance in the ship. Those 18-inch guns simply don't have the rate of fire and damage output if you don't have like the perfect aim on the perfect broadsides. It just doesn't have the damage output to really maximize her effectiveness. Now, when you start talking about her secondaries and playing her in that secondary build, she's very strong in that 10 to 11.3 kilometer range as a brawling ship, except that she isn't like other brawling ships where you want to stay mobile. She has a very similar playstyle to North Carolina, except rather than using the main battery solely in North Carolina, you're also going to be using the secondary battery as well. And I think it's kind of a fun playstyle. You just kind of sit right in that 11.3 to 10 kilometer range, maybe pushing it as close as 9 or 8 kilometers to really get those secondaries on targets off to your sides. And like I said, they are frighteningly accurate. They will melt destroyers if a destroyer is getting it shot at by all 5 turrets on one broadside. It's impressive. It is legitimately impressive. The main battery, while accurate, is either, as I stated before, a devastating penetrating or citadel hit, or pure overpens. It's entirely due to the high amount of penetration that these guns have. What I've found is that using her guns against cruisers, the best tactic is to just aim slightly below the waterline like you would in a Japanese battleship. This takes that massive penetration of those 18-inch shells and tones it down just a little bit and allows it to actually detonate inside of the cruiser. And we'll see that in the battle that I've chosen for this video. Overall, I think playing Georgia is played best as a full secondary build. The secondaries tend to add between 10 to 25,000 extra damage by themselves, plus fires, and they really make up for the lack of DPM of the main battery. When the main battery does connect with the Citadel, you're looking at the most damage from a lone Citadel hit in the game. It's an absurd amount of damage at 15,750. Holy crap. That's more than Yamato. That's great. The downside is that you're in an Iowa. It happens to be a very fast Iowa, at almost 40 knots with the speed boost and the flag on, but that also means you don't have the armor or the narrow profile, the short stubby profile of like the Massachusetts to really make brawling an effective strategy at super close ranges. Basically, you have to pick and choose when you're going to get into secondary, like full-on secondary battle and close the distance with ships. It is super difficult to predict when your team is going to support you pushing and when they're just going to leave you high and dry. And so as a result, that's why I said I tend to hang around that 9 at the closest to 11.3 kilometer range. Let the secondaries work on targets as they can, focusing on, trying to take out as many broadside ships as you possibly can. This also means that you get to let your secondaries work, which is unusual for the US battleships. In fact, there's only 2 US battleships that I would ever consider a full secondary build in. One is the Arkansas Beta, which is just trolly at tier 4 in a full secondary build and absolutely comical. And then the Massachusetts. All the other US battleships, the 5-inch 38s tend to have pretty meh damage output, even though their rate of fire is, fairly decent for secondaries. Albeit not realistic, but, balance or something. What this means is that overall, I do find Georgia to be a pretty fun ship to play. It's a unique play style for the US. It's kind of a unique play style for any battleship in the game. I would say that probably the next closest is maybe a Yamato secondary build or a Izumo secondary build. Maybe some of the high-tier French battleships. But a secondary build with those ships as well. But the biggest thing, though, for me is running down destroyers and cruisers with that almost 40 knot top speed. I can't tell you the number of destroyers that the minute they get spotted by this ship, get into that secondary range, the laser-like secondaries, and provided I can continue to dodge the torpedoes they're firing at me, I melt them. It's very rare for me not to kill a destroyer unless they just pull all the stops out and pull all their tricks out and use their smoke and manage to get away. It is absolutely impressive that this thing can do that. Cruisers, they seldomly escape too, so it's kind of funny. As far as captain skills go, again, I highly recommend a full-on secondary build. This is my Captain, who's my Arkansas Beta captain. He's my only secondary spec US captain. But you can see here I'm running preventative maintenance for the reducing the risk of damage to turrets, steering gears, or engines. Expert marksman for the increase in turret rotation speed. That's pretty critical if for a brawling ship to have fast turret traverse. You could hybrid this out if you wanted to do like high alert or jack of all trades. You could do that. I really don't know that there's last stand obviously isn't very useful. Adrenaline rush would be my last 2 points. This is a 17-point captain. From there, I have basic firing training and superintendent for obvious reasons. You could also throw in here's basics of survivability. This was high alert. Okay. Yeah, you could also throw in basics of survivability for that 15% reduction in the time for fire and flood extinguishing. But I don't like running the survivability builds. The ship NHE in this game is still ridiculous, so these I don't really find to be overly useful. In the last slots, advanced firing training for that additional range. And then, of course, manual fire control for secondaries to turn these things into freaking lasers. Lasers, man. Lasers. And then, obviously, my last 2 points would be adrenaline rush. That's the kind of build that I would recommend. That's a pure secondary build, but you could also run one of these more hybrid builds if you need a little bit of extra survivability. All right, we've talked a lot about this in the port. Let's go look at it in a battle video. All right, so this battle is, this battle is a pretty epic battle, at least in terms of my own personal performance, but it is a loss. So once again, showing another loss in the Georgia. I played 3 games prior to this that were absolute dominating victories, so it is what it is. The map is Okinawa. It is a tier 9 fight, straight across the board. There are no other ships in the game. We spawned in the northeast corner, which I think is the hardest of the 2 sides to win on. And this map has changed a metric crap ton from the last time that I played this map. I can't even begin to stress how different this map is now. It actually took one of my biggest complaints, and that's the fact that A is so isolated that it was impossible to get down to B, and it actually made it a fairly well-balanced map. That said, we're going to hang around the island there at B. We're going to use it to block off ships that are headed towards the southern part of the B cap or C. For whatever reason, a lot of ships still tend to fight down there. I don't know why. It's open waters. It's crazy. Don't do that. Well, I mean, you can do that if you want, but just understand that it's really, really sketchy in my opinion. So we're going to go hang out at the island at B. You can see, look at how fast we're already up to speed. So there's 30 knots right there, and I slammed on the brakes just to try and avoid hitting the rune. I just don't want to hit them early on, right? There's the horn, in case you were wondering. But, so strategy-wise on this map, it's really dependent upon the way that they deploy their force. Now, in this game, they deploy a force that goes all the way to the northern part of the A cap and the islands up there and tries to play that game. It's not a very wise tactic. It takes you too far away from your team that's down south, which is why I'm hanging out more towards the middle. The downside, and I did not mention this, the downside to a full-on secondary build is you do have a rather long detection range at 14.8k. With a full stealth build, obviously that's going to drop down another 1.5 to, was that 12.3? I can't math right now. 13.3. So once again, we're going to play this a bit like a North Carolina. We're going to sit bow on, and of course the Friedrich de Gross manages to get a massive hit on me, and I get an overpen. 1,500 damage, I hit a superstructure. Tended to underlead him there. Ooh, Neptune, that's always a good one. Neptunes are extremely squishy. But the upside to being where we're at on this map is that we've completely eliminated spotted. We are not spotted presently. Downside is there is something capping B, and I have no idea where it's at. Ooh, that looks good. Ooh, 2 overpens. So once again, as I said, we're either going to get those big penetrating hits with citadels, or we are going to get those overpens. So here, Friedrich der Gross, longer range, 17k. You're going to see just how accurate these guns are. We don't want to back up too much. Oh, looks like those are going to fall a little behind. 1,500 damage again. So we're just stacking them up overpens at the moment, which is excessively annoying. But that's because I'm not aiming well. And when you don't aim well, you don't get the best dispersion possible. The game tries to artificially assist you. So we're going to throw up our plane here. Oh, he's slowing down. We're going to throw up our plane here just to see if we can't figure out what's capped the B cap, because the destroyers are off in La La Land. And there we go. 2 normal pens and a regular pen for just 8,300 damage or so. So now we're going to start to see some damage roll up. Of course, Friedrich der Gross, very easy to get lots of damage on. Mostly because it's a fairly soft ship. So the other thing too, when you're playing this ship, one of the hardest things to do is to continue to keep your rate of fire up. You've only got those 6 guns, and if your secondaries aren't coming into play like they aren't right now, you really have to continue to keep firing on targets that are exposing themselves to you. Whether you choose to do it via, shooting at cruisers or battleships, whatever the targets can be, you just need to continue to keep the rate of fire up. So got some torpedoes, looks like they ran out there, but I started to move back forward. Again, keeping an eye on that left side of the map. I don't know where their, whatever it was that capped it, is at. And that makes me really nervous, because a destroyer could easily pop around this corner here, come bebopping around. Because I have manual fire control for secondaries, it would not start shooting at them automatically. So, Friedrich der Gross exposing that nice, juicy broadside to us. Look at that dispersion. Oh, torpedoes. Look at that dispersion. Boom! Citadel! 31,000 damage in one hit. That was 5 normal pens and a Citadel hit. That's 6 for 6. That's 100% accuracy. 1 salvo. And again, we have a fairly high rate of fire, 26-second reload. Oops, Sovietsky Soyuz just bit it. Friedrich der Gross. Oh, the FDG over here got him. All right, well, and round 2. And look, another Citadel for 23,000 damage. So he wasn't that far away. He was about 16 kilometers away, which for a German battleship is I mean, that's far. But that's a far cry from being, in the range at which normally you would be able to Citadel them. But to get 2 reliable Citadels, whew, 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 whew. Yeah. Alright, so at this point, kind of running out of targets over here. We're sitting, unfortunately, quite broadside to a Lion, and I don't want to be broadside to him. Thankfully, this Lion player is very hellbent on using HE all the time. Cancer, but beyond that, we'll just continue. Maybe we'll get a lucky hit on this Neptune while we come around. I'm gonna, pre-target a Kitakaze that's over there. Maybe the secondaries will start shooting over. Nope, missed him. Okay, so we'll reset our secondaries to shoot at the Fletcher. Again, not gonna have a whole lot of success there, I don't think. We just spotted something. And there's a Izumo in there. That's what was originally spotting us. You can see, just look at how much damage we are taking, though. So we took probably 8k just in a couple of HE shell hits from a couple of cruisers down there. Nothing super ridiculous, no high AP. There was 2,300 damage right there from the Lion, who, had he had the AP loaded, would have most likely Citadel. We also got to pay attention to ships that are over there. So there's Musashi, There's an Iowa. There's a cruiser there. The Iowa kind of whiffs it. The speed boost kicked in. We're at 35 knots. Oh, yeah. I tried to get the tail gun out there on the Ibuki. Ibukis are one of those ships that's kind of like Neptune, but we've got ourselves a, what is this, Brindisi is, oh way, the Italian cruiser. So now watch where I aim at it for him, okay? So, looks like we're pretty much parallel. He's kind of coming in towards me, but you see how shallow I aimed those guns? There's one Citadel for 17,000 damage. There's the second Citadel, Dev Strike, that's 5,100 damage. So I had to aim below. Two reasons for that. One is he was kind of sort of starting to angle towards me. Ooh, now we got a broadside Musashi. This is rather fortunate for us. But he was kind of angled towards us, so we had to account for that. And then on top of that, we also needed to account for the fact that these shells have ridiculously high pen. And there's a Citadel on the Musashi. God dang it, we left him with 2,000 hit points. That's alright, I'll take it. We're up to 112,813 damage. Down goes the Musashi. Okay, so now we've got a destroyer. Kitakaze. Okay, we'll get our main battery in. Again, I'm just going to shoot AP at this guy. No reason to get super excited about anything else. Secondaries will start doing their jobs here in a second. Okay, so there's 3 hits. And then 5. And then the Kitakaze disappears behind the island. But we know that he launched his entire torpedo complement at the Musashi. Fortunately, he's going to end up getting the Musashi with a lot of them, because apparently the Musashi didn't see this coming. So down goes the Musashi, and of course, we played our torpedo beats. Deja vu! So here we go. Kitakaze is exposed again. I'm going to continue to focus him down because we need him out of this fight. Destroyers at this point in the battle have reached a point that if we're going to win, we definitely need to get him out of this fight. So again, just going to shoot at him. 1,500, leaving him with 1,700 hit points. We got 5 secondary hits. 6 secondary hits, and he goes down. Ibuki's being super annoying, but we've got another target that's pretty close. We'll set our secondaries on the destroyer, and we will work the Iowa. So I've found that apparently my 2 destroyers, we have a Fletcher and a Mogador and a Izumo. Izumo's out of position for helping me, but the Mogador and Fletcher definitely could have been in position to help. So now we're bow tanking. We're in a really critical range here. The secondary arc on the front of this ship is not very good, and so there's a problem trying to get, secondaries. You're only going to get 2 turrets firing straight ahead. But once they do finally start working in, they do start racking up some damage and some incapacitations there. But we're going to continue focusing on the Iowa, so we're going to focus and we're going to shoot for the superstructure. We want to put rounds into a superstructure. Those overpens are going to be about the only thing that we can really hope for to keep him from ramming us. We don't want him to ram us. I don't know who the hell is shooting at me from behind. Oh, it's the Mogador that's shooting at me. Like, what the heck, man? Okay, so the Iowa's got 800, and down goes the Iowa. Okay, so I'm going to switch away from the enemy destroyer over there. You can see we took him down to about half his hit points, just with secondaries. So at this point, kind of in a no-win situation. The team is too far spread out. I've pretty much determined that this is a no-go match for us. So we'll just set the secondaries to start shooting at this Missouri. We're going to try and push ahead and see if he can stay focused on taking out the Donskoy, and maybe we can get a good lucky shot off. I just didn't feel like he was angled just enough that those were going to bounce if I shot at him. So I turn in, and he starts turning in. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to shoot at the barbette there. Well, eventually. So he's no longer focusing on me. What I should have done is I should have just continued to sail past him. I do have one heal that we pop. Yep, there we go. 153,000 damage. Added a bunch. 6k more. 160,000 now. And at this point, I see that this match is effectively over. we'll just go ahead and ram and take out a radar ship. And there's high caliber. So we ended the match with 184,633 damage, 3 kills. I will gladly take that ram. So you kind of got to see a little bit of everything. We have 107 secondary hits. They accomplished 3 incapacitations and a fire. So we're not going to have a whole lot of damage fire-wise in this, but we're definitely going to have a lot of damage in the secondaries. And you saw at the very, very beginning of the match just how little we had done in secondary damage, and then as soon as the secondaries really started to kick in there on that Missouri, it started to rack up our damage totals very quickly. We went from about 142 to about 155 in a real big hurry when they just had something that was super easy to hit to shoot at. So here's the reasons why killing destroyers in the early game is so dang important. They have 2, we had 2. The Donskoy is trying to deal with the Fletcher the best that he can. It's just unfortunate. Like, unfortunately, not able to kill them. Oh, the other thing that we did do is we did tank 2 million potential damage. So it wasn't like we were out of this fight by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, we definitely had a metric crap ton of damage before we even started actually taking damage ourselves. Just by virtue of being in the right place, not having a whole lot of shells fired directly at us. But definitely once we got focused on, you saw how quickly we melted. And that's the USS Iowa core traits coming out. Unfortunately. It just doesn't quite have that. The Citadel is at the waterline, but it's the Iowa's Citadel, and the Iowa can be Citadel'd at close range, and that's part of the reason why it's not a very good brawler. It does, even though it is quite maneuverable and it has access to that speed boost, you don't want to use that to get yourself into the fight too quickly. You definitely want to hold the back just a little bit, and don't rush in there. Think before you go whole hog into there. It's really, really tempting to just rush in there because you can go 40 knots, but you can't turn around. Once you're in there, you're hosed. There's no turning around in there. So you got to kind of back it out. What I use it for is I use it to slow down and speed up. Like if I'm chasing a destroyer, I'll use it to change my speed because it impacts your acceleration. Oh, and there's the end of the match. But it changes your acceleration, and it can throw off torpedoes that are shot at you. So 184,633 damage. Again, 5 Citadels, 3 sinks. We are at the top of the team, 1,319 base XP. It is a loss, so we didn't get the full thing. Secondary damage, 15,500, and then throw on 10,000 damage for the one fire that we sat. That's pretty crazy. Look at those stats. Okay, so we did 25,000 damage in ramming, but 10,000 in just secondary damage, the fires from them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm your Peacekeeper, signing us out of the Gaming Lounge. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.